about. Yeah, exactly. Not taking it.
So I do want to have a mini conversation though about Nian Saba, about what she's been doing, and the obviously other headline to what she's been doing is that she's supposed to be running the 800, but World Athletics isn't letting her run the 800 because of a ruling by World Athletics that DSD athletes are deemed to have an unfair advantage in the 800 to the mile or 400 to the mile. Now, I've been getting some emails and people are upset with my take on this because my take is very black and white, is that she's a woman and she should be allowed to run whatever event she wants to run. Now, people were like, yeah, but look at the XY chromosome number 46 or whatever, and they bring up all these science things about like unfair advantage. And I'm just saying, I just look at it. She's not on that track with an unfair advantage in my mind. It would be an unfair advantage. She's out there running 750 or running 149 in the 800 or running 1335 Ks. Okay, that's not what's happening. She almost lost in the race in this 3K. If you look at second place ran 819 as well. And we don't look at that performance to be like, whoa, that person's in a different realm as the rest of the field. It's unfair for Tay. She's like too much better than everyone else, right? We look back now at these 800s. We're seeing a Thing Mo and Keely Hodgkinson both run 155 at the age of 19, and no one is freaking out about it because like the rest of the field could never run 155. But that's what Caster Semenya and Nian Saba were running, like 155, 154 at the best. We all are expecting Thing Mo to probably be a 153 athlete, but no one is going to be saying like unfair advantage. No one else in the world can run 153s right now. The idea that these athletes are like running on roller skates against everyone else and that it's just two different fields of competition. It's just not true. Like women can run 819. Women can run 155. And that's what these runners are doing. The idea that they have like just an unfair advantage that a Thing Mo can't ever get to, or that Tay can never get to, or Safana San can never get to, it's just not true. Safana San can beat Nian Saba. A Thing Mo, I think, could beat Caster Semenya.
Yeah.
So what I
think,
don't think that the argument that they're too much better than everyone, because they're not. Nian Saba is not out there running 745s. Like she's running 819.
Here's what I think is interesting about it, and you touched on it briefly there about the advantage, because you can have an advantage and still not be beating everybody, right? Like you could see that in this case, and people could say, well, it's still not fair. But here's the problem that I have with that. The way World Athletics framed this, and you go back and you can look at the clips when this decision first got handed down with Semenya, this was all framed around she's too good for this event. And the evidence that they used was, look at how much she's dominating this event. And then when they asked, well, why is it 400 to the mile? And they said, well, that's where the largest impact is, and we reserve the right to change it if somebody else dominates another event. Basically saying, we're not really following any sort of scientific protocol here. Is we're just checking it out. We're just watching these races, and if there's a big margin. So I saw some of those emails that you were getting where people were saying, hey, Gordon, like someone could still have an advantage over someone else and it not be a 750 3K runner, and that still should count. But what I would say to those folks is, we'll go back and look originally at why this thing was mandated, and a lot of it was born out of the fact that Semenya was just dominating. So I do think it is relevant then when you're saying, okay, well, these people are approaching the same times that other people have run, and then all of a sudden we have people going out of these events and they're able to still succeed. I mean, what do you think? Does Nian Saba thriving in the 3K, does this prove World Athletics' point, or does it refute their point about her not being able to run the 400 of the mile?
I think it refutes it because I mean, I think it refutes it and it proves it. whatever side you're on. It like proves your point on the other side. That's an interesting point. I think the bigger point is not what Nian Saba is doing, but what Safan Hassan is doing and what Athing Mo is doing, what Keely Hodgkinson's doing. Two 19-year-olds running 155. Like they have yet to hit their peak. Clearly, they're both going to be able to run faster. And no one is outraged about they're running too. No one is saying they're running too fast. Everyone wants them to run faster. People were lining up to watch Prefontaine to see Athing Mo run faster. No one was like, Athing Mo's cheat code, guys. We need to change it. We need to figure out a way to make it fair. It's like, what? No. Like, they're Athing Mo's not out there running 148. Like, she's running like, it's like, why all of a sudden were we like, Caster's too fast, but we're not saying that about Athing Mo. And the reason why, I think, is, I think people were like saying, humans are probably going to look at the physical characteristics of some of these athletes and then say like, well, my brain doesn't want to make it make sense. So I'm going to say it's the biological testosterone limit world and all that science quote type stuff. But they're like, maybe we should just look at, maybe they just happen to be faster than the field of that era. And that's okay. We have dominant athletes in every era who are just way better than everyone else. Mo Farah was just way better than everyone else. Bekele was just way better than everyone else. Bolt was just way better than everyone else. Caster Semenya, during her run, was just way better than everyone else. And that's okay. You have that. We now have that now. Athing Mo is just way better than everyone else. And that's cool. Like now there's someone that people are going to chase. They were chasing Caster. Now they're chasing Athing. And they have, Athing looks like she's going to be pretty good for 10 years. So, and there's Keely Hodgkinson is already trying to catch her and it's close, right? She ran 155. So like there's a 19-year-old out there in the UK who has a chance to beat the unbeatable in Athing Mo, right? Athing Mo even lost this year. She lost in the 400. So like this idea that these DSD athletes were cheat code is just not true. They weren't. They were beatable. It just happened to be not as good as the field at the time. If Athing Mo was born 6 years earlier, maybe Caster doesn't. You know what? Oh, I'm going to say, if Athing Mo was born 6 years earlier, maybe Athing Mo, maybe she doesn't beat Caster, but maybe she pushes her, and then maybe World Athletics doesn't look at this as a problem because they see an American athlete going neck and neck with Caster, and they're like, okay, we have competition, we're good, and no one freaks out. But it was because there was a gap in distance, and there was a 1-2-3 sweep of DSD athletes in the 800. Like no one is saying like, hey, Jamaica has an unfair advantage in the 100. We have a problem because they keep on going 1-2-3 in every event they're in. No, Jamaica just happens to have 3 athletes who are born in Jamaica who are really good. They don't have an unfair advantage. Obviously, birth location is not the same thing as biological makeup, and I get it. But I'm trying to prove a point that this whole thing started because of their dominance in the event, not because of some scientific proof that they're able to prove with like all this data that like it is without any doubt, no matter if you're born this way, you are going to always be better than everyone not born this way. And it's not true because Caster could have lost. We're seeing that now. Nian Saba has lost. She got 5th in the 10K. She almost lost in this race. So anyway, I put out a tweet kind of showing. Yeah. So.
No, I'm saying you're like, I put out a tweet. It's obviously a complex issue. It's obviously a complex issue to this. I think your larger point here about the origins for why they wanted to make a rule matches up, again, if you go back and look, with what they were saying at the time, which was the margin of competition. That's what they wanted to avoid, the margin of victory, right, in the women's 800. And I think obviously we saw the story last week right? About the evidence that they used in the paper in order to make their point to Kaz, and now being like rescinded. And now Semenya's legal team, I'm sure, is saying, well, what can we go back and do we have grounds to go to court again and try to get this tossed out? Because I do think if you have people drop down to the 2 or move up to the 3K or 5K, right, the pressure is going to be on to extend the ban to those events. So that's one thing World Athletics is going to have to deal with. The other thing is clear. Anybody's paying attention. Every athlete, every high profile athlete that's been impacted by this, they're all from Africa. They're all from Africa, and that's something that needs to be dealt with here and explained too. Because from the outside looking in, it looks like you're excluding a lot of athletes born in one geographic area here, and other athletes are not being excluded. So again, that's something that World Athletics is going to have to figure out moving forward, because we had 3 women in the 800, we've had 400-meter runners over the last uh, in the 19 cycle and now in the 21 cycle, and there's the common thread between all of them. So again, I just think there needs to be a little bit more transparency in this issue. And again, like the red flags to me went off when they were basically saying at the beginning they were looking for a reason to move specific athletes out of the, because you can agree that like that there should be a policy or a line that needs to be drawn, but I don't think anybody agrees that good policy comes from figuring out the back or doing the end first and then reverse engineering and trying to figure out how you get that person out. Like that's not the root of any good policy or any good rule in any sport.
Do you know what I think? I think they wanted to create a policy. And I also think they didn't want to ban anyone from the sport. I think they want to try to have their cake and eat it too. Make their, what's the phrase? Make their cake and eat it too. What, I don't even know if you know what I'm saying. Because I think
Yeah.
they were like, okay, this is the way we can solve this problem without technically eliminating these athletes from our sport. Because we can let them just do the participation events where we know they're not going to win. Where we know, like, hey, Caster, you can only do the race walk. So you're still invited to come to our event, but you only can do the race walk. Just so you can't get mad at us for banning you because we're giving you opportunities in the race walk. This was them being like, we're giving you opportunities in other events. We just know you've trained 10 years in this event, and the odds of you being good in these other events probably isn't going to happen, right? But now, Lian Saba is kind of like, LOL, watch me. I'm going to start training in the 3K and 5K and get good at it. And, a 156 runner being good in a 3K, we know that's not that weird, really, because you see someone like Safana Hassan doing it, right? She's a 156 runner who can run a fast 3K. Mm-hmm. But
well, and the issue here is should people have to take medication, right, to suppress something that's naturally produced in their body, right? Like that's the core of it here too. You're asking them to take something on, to do something which as a prerequisite to compete through no other choice of their own other than they want to be able to compete. It reminds me, and this is not the same thing. So full disclosure, put the disclaimer out there. I'm not comparing the same issues, and obviously this example is fraught because of who the person it centers around. That's Oscar Pistorius, right? And I remember talking to someone towards the latter part of his career when he was threatening to make finals, and the person said, "Hey, I think they wanted to do this because it was a great story, but they had no idea how good he would get. And then once he started threatening to make podiums, which he never ultimately ended up doing, then more and more pressure was on of like, hey, wait a minute, what are the actual regulations here?" And they wanted to avoid it at all. They wanted to avoid the controversy, but they also didn't want to put any exclusionary rules in place here. And then you get to the point where you're just like, okay, so perhaps that was someone within the organization had thought of that example and thought, okay, well, we're just gonna lay down a marker right now, and we're gonna hold ourselves to it. But I'm surprised, to be honest, when I go back and think about CAS upholding that regulation. I'm still surprised that they did it, given what we know about all the evidence now.